right. So tonight, what are we focusing on? We're going to talk about your dental supplies management. We're going to help you be more efficient and excellent. So I'm going to hand this off and let the coaches introduce themselves. But you got Miss Tiffany and you got Brad. So take it from here.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm excited to nerd out on inventory. If you don't know me, I love my spreadsheets. I love helping organizations cut their expenses. And this is one of the areas that I broke. So when I talk about I crashed a lot of Ferraris, when we talk about the percentage, when we're off by 1-2%, it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but we times that by how many $1 million a year we're doing in revenue. And this is definitely when I see a lot of organizations are crashing their Ferraris and screwing up their expenses. So we're going to really talk through here today. I broke it, so I fixed it, and I fixed it even with Brad before Brad even joined the DEO. So we'll get to be able to share kind of real life experiences. So I'm really excited to do that. And we got Brad, our supply whisperer. So Brad, tell him about who you are.
It's nice to meet you guys, Brad Freeman. I head up a company over here called Source Club, and we've been in the dental space now going on 5 years. I've been here doing the dental supply chain procurement thing for 15. It's weird when someone says you're an expert, but I'll say I'm pretty damn good at it. I don't know about an expert. I don't know if you've never been an expert at anything, but excited to kind of share that piece of knowledge and help you guys get a little better on the call today.
Good. We're going to be like the Batman and Robin today of supplies. So a little bit of ops, a
Yeah.
little bit of strategy. So how many of you, when you started with the DEO and went through this profitability cycle with your tribe coaches, found that your supplies were just totally out of whack and you didn't know and you were actually surprised? So those of you who know me, you know I love a good emoji. So drop your good emoji in there and how what you realized when you did the profitability cycle and saw your dental supplies. So what I love about this though is it helps us, we can get really clear on, is it a revenue problem? Is it a collections problem? Or is it a reduce expenses? And supplies definitely fall under reduce expenses for sure. Also, we've got our profitability stages. I promise you, those that are sitting up here on passive profits, we all want to be there, but we have to stop our leaking buckets and we've got to launch. And those that are sitting in passive profits, I promise you, they don't have these beautiful black gloves that match their beautiful black masks. So I know sometimes we want the beautiful, but we're going to help you guys save some money here. All right, so what are we going to leave with? We're going to leave with a checklist, of course. If you've joined mine in the past, you know that I have a great checklist for you and some of Brad's amazing strategies. So Brad, tell them a little bit about what you're going to help them leave with tonight.
I love it. So we're going to walk through essentially an 8-step process that is going to help you really get your crap together, get organized, get efficient, get standardized, but then ultimately take a step further and actually dive a little bit more into your supplies and look at opportunities and ways you can save, right? We're going to get into some specific details as we talk through types of products, categories of products. The strategies change for each, but by the end of these 8 steps, you'll have some good takeaways to actually accomplish a lot of the goals and savings that we talked through today.
Awesome. Okay, good. All right, so let's talk about actually why we got here today too. Again, I shared with you, I had started at 10%. I had no idea what they should be. My Henry Schein rep told me they should be 8%, and they should be 8% of production, not 8% of collections. And why? Because they want you to spend a lot on your supplies. And so with trying to figure out how to make us more profitable, went down, I found a company that was really kind of like your Amazon, right? And with the Amazon company, was able to get my supplies down to 4%. And when I met Brad, Brad was like, hey, I can save you money. And I said, Brad, I think you can save me money, but it doesn't matter if you can save me money if I actually am not able to lower my percent of supplies. And this is where we found Brad. Brad says, I can. So I was able to, when I left my organization, we were sitting at 2% for dental supplies with the work that we did here. So we definitely can do it. And Brad's going to share with you a lot of the things, what he sees, because Brad, you see organizations all the time. And what are they typically spending on their supplies?
The last 6 months has kind of increased all the tariffs and inflations and all that kind of good jazz, but we're seeing it hit around 7 to 8% these days. But to be frank, it's not unseen to see 10, 12, 13%, all the time. So, but the industry average is trending right around 7 to 8.
7 to 8. Ouch. Okay, gosh, cut that down, and that can be like 60 grand a year, maybe. And one of my clients, what did you save them? 30,000 a month? I
Yeah,
mean, that's like a used car.
it's huge. It's huge. It's ultimately at the end of the day, it's the volume play. As you talk about it, 2% supply spend, we can get you there all day. But the idea being is 8%. That's industry average. But I'd argue we're not all on this call today because we're striving to be average. And so by the takeaway, our goal is going to be significantly lower than that. So we'll walk you through it.
Awesome. Let's dive through the 8 steps, shall we, Brad?
Yes, ma'am. Let's go.
Okay. What do we start with?
We're going to identify a lead. You've got to have a person running this project. We're going to talk a little deeper about who you choose, the different size you are, what are the roles they can do to get in there, but you have to have someone running this project. If you're just saying, oh, we're going to go try it and do it, whatever, and this person's going to do that, it's all over the place, it's never going to work out. You have to have someone own responsibility over it, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But once you've got the identified your project lead, you move into step 2. Step 2 is ultimately going to be the audit and documentation of everything you order, right? You got to understand, to be able to make changes, to be able to create a strategy, you actually have to you have to know what you're ordering, who you're ordering it from, how frequently, what are you spending? We talk with a lot of offices that we ask them, hey, what do you spend on an annual basis on supplies? And they just look at us like, oh no, I'd have to go, calculate that and tell you that. I don't pay attention to that. So you have to get all this data together so you can actually do something with it, devise a plan and execute. So once you get the data, I'm going to pass it over to Tiffany. You're going to start to centralize it on that side.
Yep. We want to get everything organized. Okay. We want to get it all clean, nice, organized. We're going to find all of those hidden nuggets in our operatories. Many of us have, our expired toothpaste that's been hanging out since the 1990s. So we're going to get organized. We're also going to organize our operatories, and we're going to get our supplies categorized.
So as we talk about the categorization of your supplies, the idea being, once again, you're going to have different strategies for different types of supplies as you go. So we'll talk a little bit later about the different strategies you have for the different categories, the different, identification of those products. But as you get into step 5 is really when you're optimizing, step 1 through 4, that's organization, data collecting, just getting base set. As we go step 5 and beyond, it's ultimately about driving that additional value, the savings, the efficiency, things of that nature. So once you get through this piece, we're going to talk strategies on negotiations and consolidations. But once you do that, you now have this, formulary, if you will. You've collected all this data, you've then built this formulary and negotiated and consolidated, but you're going to then implement that into a procurement software. And we're going to talk through some of the strategies with that software. We're going to talk about setting budgets and goals and approvals. But ultimately, once you get that software set up, you'll move into step 7. So with that being said, this is then going to be the actual realization and execution of this strategy, the savings, the efficiency, right? You've got to create internal systems, checks and balances, monthly reports, and we're going to talk through some of those things you need to be tracking on a monthly basis. And then ultimately, you got to rinse and repeat it. Procurement, as much as people think procurement, supply chains, dental supplies is a set it and forget it strategy, it's not. It is a procurement life cycle. The products move, it's ever evolving. New products come out, better discounts come out. And so as you look through it, we're going to talk about the time you should spend, negotiating and going after certain strategies. But at the end of the day, you got to rinse and repeat the cycle to continue improving.
Awesome. Okay, great. Let's dive in.
Wow.
All right. So step 1, project lead. Why, Brad, do we need a project lead?
At the end of the day, nothing happens if someone is not responsible for it and controlling it. We are human beings. We take the path of least resistance. And, in theory, if we all have a lot on our plate, well, so we'll still take responsibility on it. They got the email too, kind of a thing. But you really truly need to have one project lead on this, right? And so depending on the size of the organization, you're going to have different people who can step into that, right? Certain size organizations need more authority, if you will, in that figure. But at the end of the day, the goal here is to have a team member that can keep track of what you're doing, be held accountable, and actually make sure you're progressing towards your goals, right? So if you're a single doctor, private location, you're kind of getting started in this whole mix, you haven't really done anything. Well, at the end of the day, you probably have a lead ordering assistant that handles most of your ordering. They know where your supplies are going. They, in theory, probably know more accurately what they spend on supplies than you do if you're not paying attention to your financials, right? But ultimately, this person can kind of step up, your lead assistant, and kind of take some of that responsibility on, right? You can also have your office manager step in. That is typically who I like to have run points on a lot of these conversations, although they typically delegate a lot more of those tasks down to that, lead ordering assistant, if you will. Obviously, doctor can step in and manage it and do it as well, but time is money at the end of the day, right? They're the producers, they're the revenue generators, and so the less you can bring them into the equation, the probably quicker you can get it done. But transparently, you always got to bring doctors into the life cycle. We'll talk about that in the product mix here in just a bit, right? As you start growing in size, you need someone who is a little bit more over everything, right? If you're 3 locations, 4 locations, you can't have one lead assistant over here doing it for all locations. They don't know what's going on. So you need an operations person, a clinical lead. If you have an owning doctor partner that, hey, is wanting to do a little less chair time and wanting to drive some other value or savings or revenue somewhere else, right? At the end of the day, we see a lot of associate doctors wanting to step up and help with this, right? They're wanting more responsibility. They're new or they're out of school, they're knowing they're not as quick yet or whatever it may be, but we've seen them step up a lot of the times and really help get aggressive to show, hey, they're part of the team as well. As you get larger, you want to start buying, you really want to start getting more higher doctor up buy-in approval, to be frank with you, right? A lot of the models out there are autonomous or clinically sensitive, and you never want to dictate what people do in order to some extent. We'll talk about that later as well. But at the end of the day, the more you can bring in some non-practicing doctors, doctor owners, things of that nature, you can have a director of operations start actually getting into your procurement side. But as you get really large, 30 plus locations, you really need to start actually looking at dedicated staff to manage this on a real-time basis, right? If you're spending millions of dollars a year in supplies, that warrants a person to manage it day in, day out, right? But the idea being here, assign a lead, put someone responsible, track and measure and hold them accountable.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, the groups that I work with as well, team, I honestly, this is the place where it breaks the most and slows everything down is nobody owns it and they don't have a deadline. So it's kind of like, it's something we're working on, but it takes so long because we just don't really get them connected. So honestly, this is one of the pieces I find breaks a lot is not having somebody who's going to own this project. All right. So after we own the project, where do we go?
At the end of the day, ask them. Ask them if they want to do it. If people say yes, they'd be interested in doing it. They tend to want to do it and do a good job at it.
Yeah. Okay. Now this is for those who love spreadsheets. So who loves spreadsheets? What do we do with them, Brad?
All right. So this is the part that is really the education to what you order, what you buy, what you do, right? At the end of the day, what you should be looking to do is organize and understand where you're ordering, what you're ordering, why you're ordering it, and how much you're spending on it, right? So the real theory here is that you want to collect all of your 12-month purchase history from all of the suppliers and vendors you order from, right? That can be a lot, right? So I typically say focus on your first one, your top 2 to 3, right? Typically, most offices we run into, their top 1 to 2, 2 to 3 vendors represents about 80% of their spend, right? But as you go through it, the easiest way to kind of get that data or provide that data to your team is there, if you're using accounting software out there, Sage, QuickBooks, whatever, there's a report that you can pull. It's called a spend by vendor report, more specifically spend by vendor, and you can do it by GL like supplies, but spend by vendor, right? You can go through and identify the vendors that you order from, then go out to them and request a 12-month purchase history report and have them send that back to you. Always get it in Excel. They're going to want to send it to you in PDF and blah, blah, blah. Always get everything in Excel, okay? That way you can actually combine it, organize it, and do something with it, right? So once you get your purchase history back from all these suppliers in Excel, you're going to then organize it into this spreadsheet that Tiffany's showing here, right? You can organize it in different ways. You can collect more data points right here, but this is what I would argue would be the absolute bare minimum data points I would collect, right? This is going to be your product name, the supplier you ordered it from, the supplier item number, manufacturer name, manufacturer item number, how many you ordered, what's the current price point or unit price you're paying, and what do you spend annually on those products, right? You can even get unit of measure, packaging details, right? You can get this list can get more detailed as you want it to. If you're not a list person, if you're not an Excel person, I would keep it bare minimum to this. If you love it and you nerd out over this, oh man, data is key. You can get so much information from these categories, subcategories, spend by GLs. It's pretty impressive, right? But the goal here is to take all this purchase history from all these suppliers, right? The more specialty you are, the more likely you have multiple different suppliers, right? The bigger your list grows. But the idea being is now organize it into an Excel document in a similar same fashion so you can filter and search and do all that. But this is essentially what you're creating is your baseline formula.
Yep.
And Brad,
Awesome.
good point. Kyle dropped in the chat so you guys see it in case you guys can't see the chat. If for some reason they send you a PDF, drop that into Chat GPT. Tell them to make it in Excel format. So that little nugget got dropped in. So I want to make sure you guys saw that.
And they all have it in Excel. You just have to ask for it in Excel too. Okay, awesome. So while we're getting our supply history together as well, this is something that if you use a partner like SourceCrep, you're going to send this into them so that they can help you start analyzing your spend. While they're doing that, here is the big piece I want you to start focusing on in your practices, is that I want you to get everything centralized. I want you to get it organized. Why? Because I guarantee if you go back to your office tomorrow, you're going to go open up the cupboards in your hygiene operatories, in your other operatories, and you are just going to go and find where things went to die, literally went to die. And that bottle of Bond you've been looking for, or all of a sudden you have 10 bottles and you had no idea and they're sitting in one operatory because somebody's hoarding them. If we get them all moved to one centralized ordering or one centralized space, now you can see where everything is, and we're not running around like chickens with our heads cut off trying to find where everything is. It also makes ordering and keeping inventory control much easier when we only have one place that we need to go to find everything. When we go to that one place, I want you to label it. So anytime you get a brand new dental assistant, what do they want to do? They want to go redo your whole office. And before you know it, nobody can find anything because where things were, they didn't have a home, they weren't labeled. So one thing I always have my clients do is I want them to put them all on the shelves. I want them to put tape on the shelves of what goes where and label them. I want to have small boxes of gloves here, and what's my minimum quantity, what's my maximum quantity. That also really helps with inventory control and make sure that we don't have, 6 months of worth of boxes of gloves hanging out when we don't need to store gloves like that anymore. The other thing is in your operatories, I want you to clean your operatories out. I do not want a ton of supplies in our operatories because what happens is we have those couple of ops that we don't really use, and we'll have anesthetics sitting in there. And what's it doing? It's expiring. And that little carpule is not very big, so the team just fills the drawer up with it. And now we have hundreds of dollars worth and thousands of dollars worth of stuff that just starts to expire. So in our operatories, we want to keep those super minimal. I want to keep them to my disposables, right? My disposables really only, and like 1 week's worth of stuff needs to stay in there. These operatories are not meant to be overflowing with stuff. That's not what we want to do with them. So what are we going to do with our stuff instead is create procedure boxes. Procedure boxes also are going to boost your efficiencies, especially if you have multiple providers and maybe one likes to use Gluma on fillings, one likes to use these one matrix bands, the other one wants to use these, and the assistants are running in and out of the rooms all the time trying to grab all the things that each provider wants. Instead, we want to have procedure boxes that has everybody's items in those procedure boxes, and that's what they're coming and taking with them from room to room. It will also cut down on your supplies because I don't need that bottle of Bond now in 7 operatories. I need maybe 7 or 3 procedure boxes that are going to be fully stocked with these. Also, I love rolling carts. Rolling carts were one of my favorites for when we had endo and implants. They had their own supply cart that everything stayed in that cart and was able to be moved from room to room. It also made sure that when we went to do inventory counts for our endo, we didn't have to go all over the office to look for all those little boxes of file sizes. Implant sizes, same thing. We had a nice one place for them all to be, kept it really organized. So make sure you use those because seriously, it will really help with inventory control as well. All right, so now what do we do with our categorizing our supplies, Brad, when we get this back from you and it says, all right, now what?
Let's go. So steps 1 through 4 so far have been just getting your stuff in order, right? Setting baseline, getting good practices. As we progress now we're going at it with some strategy, right? With some goal, with some intent. So the first thing is, the goal here in step 5 is to classify your products, right? In theory, this can take some time. You may not do every single product you order. The more accurate you do, the more you do, the better the results. But the reality of it being is you need to understand each type of product you order and how you can actually save on that specific product, right? And so we have really 3 different types of product categories that we like to identify. There's a lot more actual categories as you get real specific with it, right? But the 3 we look at are non-clinically sensitive products. Then you have semi-clinically sensitive products and clinically sensitive products, right? These are essentially the doctor, hygienist, the clinician's preference or threshold to the products that they're using at the end of the day. You'll see some of your non-clinically sensitive supplies being sterilization pouches, bibs, saliva ejectors, micro tip applicator, 2x2 gauze, headrest covers, crap like that, right? Now, as you get more on the other side of the spectrum, clinically sensitive, your bonds, your etchants, your implants, your bones, your hygiene instruments, right? These are things that you have to approach a lot softer, right? You have to be a little, your opportunity of savings is a bit more limited where people are specific, right? But then you have that middle category of products that's where you can save a ton of money, right? Really, at the end of the day, you're gonna focus first on those non-clinically sensitive products, right? As you go through it, the opportunity being from moving from house brand to name brand products. That's a lot of what we see a lot of times from a lot of the GPs out there that are ordering through distribution. You should be ordering, at least 15-20% of your products through a house brand or value brand, right? These are the things that you don't care about at the end of the day. You can shop around suppliers. Value brand, house brand products like gloves. All gloves are made essentially in one of 4 plants in Malaysia, right? All your impression materials manufactured in a couple of places in Asia and India. But the idea being is all these house brand value brands are the same. More specifically, on non-clinically sensitive items, you shouldn't be ordering name brand things either, right? Like ordering name brand micro tip applicators, right? That can become, pretty cumbersome. But as we look through our example here, go back one and yeah, that's perfect, Tiffany, actually.
Oh.
That's perfect. So as we go through this example, let's talk about some of those more non-clinically sensitive products, right? Those are going to be things like your 27 gauge plastic hub anesthetic needles, right? Your lidocaine, articaine, sterilization pouches, right? And so you'll see in these kind of examples we run, these 27 gauge plastic anesthetic needles, they're ordering them from Cardinal, paying 12, 14 for them, and they ordered 15. And ultimately, this is what their formulary purchase history is showing. But as we go through these, we're going to look at some specific examples where you can move from a name brand to a house brand, shop around house brands, or even consolidate. If you're ordering 2 different, value brands of sterilization pouches, consolidate those to one because one's potentially better priced. So if you would, Tiffany, hit that next button there. So as we go through, well, that's kind of hard to explain. Flip back out on or next slide over, or does it show it zoom back?
Back one.
Well, yeah, does it show it zoom back out though as we run through it? Actually, go back to the first one, sorry.
Sure.
So as we look for it, this is kind of like a mini analysis that we provided as an example, right? So everything on the left in black and gray, that's their purchase history. That's that formulary you built. That's the all that documentation you organize in Excel. That's the plan, right? But as you go through it, you'll see, for example, that plastic needle, they're ordering a name brand. Switching that from house brand, this is a real office, real examples. Switching to a house brand, they say 51%, right? It's a $5.90 needle. They're all manufactured by Cardinal, Ividin, a few others, right? But they save $93 a year on one plastic needle, right? As you go down this next sterilization pouch, they went from a house brand, they were ordering one house brand, but they shopped around to other suppliers through ours, and they found a better priced house brand, value brand option, right? They save 50% on that product, or $240 a year on a, 5.25 by 10-inch sterilization pouch, right? So the third example down at the bottom is more of a consolidation, right? So like the very specific example, lidocaine, articaine, all manufactured by Septodont, right? At the end of the day, Americaine, bupivacaine, those all manufactured by Carestream. So, but you may be ordering Shine brand, Benco brand, the Septodont brand, Perel brand. But the idea, this office was ordering 5 different brands of Americaine at the end of the day. We moved them all to the best priced option, which was the one that was the house brand, the very bottom option at $61.15. It is the exact same product. It comes from the exact same manufacturer, and they saved what, $600 on that a year on one anesthetic product. So this goes through the motions and shows you what you can actually save by looking at your non-clinically sensitive products. You're not a diva about everything, right? You can be, and we're going to talk. Those products you're a diva about, be it, do it, get after it. But for the products you're not, the non-clinically sensitive products, get aggressive. There's a lot of ways you can save on those.
Yeah, for sure. I think we just found one recently, Brad, didn't we, with the one group we're working with, and they were ordering the most expensive boxes of gloves. And they're peds, so they're doing, 200 patients a day. And you think about 200 patients a day with the box of the most expensive gloves. So it was like, oh my gosh, I think it was over $100,000 a year they were going to save just by switching their gloves.
Tiffany, I see this every day. People buying $40, $50, they're micro brush applicator tips, little tubes of 400. They're buying them from micro brush because that's who makes them, right? It's called the micro brush. They're 40 or $50. The house brand is $4.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The micro tip applicator, it's the same. It's manufactured in the same plant.
Yeah. So I
Wow.
tell you, we're crashing Ferraris, friends. We're just like, we just don't realize it. And honestly, the micro brush is a micro brush. It's no difference. No difference. So,
Love it.
okay. All right. So yeah.
Now, as you get, we talked about being a diva. I love it. There's some things that I won't skip out on. Cowboy boots is one of them, right? But as you go through, there are things that you truly care about. There are products that are superior. You use them for a reason, right? Or your docs or, hygiene, they use them for a reason, patient care. You never want to jeopardize patient care by going through this process, right? At the end of the day. So as you look at more semi-clinical and clinically sensitive products, your availability of options starts to limit, right? Let's start with clinically sensitive products first. That's your Scotch bond, your bonding agents, your composites, your implants, your bulk fill, your core buildup, all that kind of stuff, right? These are things that you are comfortable with, you like, you use them for a reason. There's a rhyme to the reason, right? From those, your really only option is, okay, well, you can switch brands, but if you don't want to switch brands, you're kind of specific to it. You have to look at other places that sell that product. There are tons of suppliers that sell 3M Scotch Bond, Dentsply's Prime and Bond, or OptiBond from Kerr. Every single one, they all sell the same products. They all buy them at the same wholesale price from the manufacturer. So go shop around those name brand products. If you don't want to change, cool. Just make sure you're buying them from the best price supplier out there. Now, what I love the semi-clinically sensitive products. This is what we can really show you at the end of the day. And these are the products that, hey, you are clinically sensitive to, but you might be open to alternatives. If there's enough savings, enough justification, you can make some moves, whatever it may be. These are the products where you can start looking at samples, right? You can try other brands. You can try some house brands, right? I'm always surprised. Not surprised, I realize it. How many doctors are moving to house brand Diamond Burrs knowing that all the diamond and stuff is manufactured in a few specific plants, right? Well, Diamond Burrs from Kerr are $60, $50, $60. For a house brand, they're 5, 8, 10. Now, there's some cheap ones, right? But it's finding that value. It's finding the best quality, but also paired with that best price because we're all here to be business people at the end of the day, right? So as you go through, that's where you can truly optimize, save the most. You got to think VPS impression material, burrs, a lot of your more operative or diagnostic instruments and things of that nature. A lot of your IV, your sterilization, or it's not sterilization, your sodium chloride bags, right? Baxter, Bebra, it's all the same. So at the end of the day, those are, as you go through semi-clinical and clinically sensitive products, you have to be a little lighter with the touch, right? You can't, if you're multi-location or have multi-doctors, you can't just go ripping supplies out of their hands and replacing it with something else. You're going to have anarchy. I used to work for a big 200 office DSO when we were the old school model, and I had to tell doctors all day why they couldn't have, you don't want to do that. Give them what they care about. At the end of the day, if you can all get together, better culture and start ordering the same thing, even better at that point.
Yeah. I'll tell you, when we first did the project and we pulled all of our supply lists, so we had the 3 locations, and we pulled all of our supply lists together, and we found things like, the chlorhexidine, right? And one office was just ordering the name brand of chlorhexidine. The other office was ordering the house brand, and I think it was like $2 a bottle versus, I don't know, I think it was like $15 a bottle. And we asked them, why do you order that one? And they're like, I don't know, I just asked for chlorhexidine. And so it's like, you just don't always know. Sometimes your offices are ordering different items and different supplies because they don't know there's something different, where they were fine to use the regular brand of the chlorhexidine rinse. They didn't know the difference, but it was such a price difference. So sometimes they just don't know what they're ordering and there's other options
Yep.
there.
And as you go through this process and assign the team leads, the reality of doing this entire project in 100% completion, the perfect way the first time is unrealistic, right? But we're getting better. We're going every time we do it, every quarter, we're going to get better and better. And so as you go through the first time, as you go through the negotiations, the categorization, most individual doctor, your average GP orders between 250 and 400 unique products, depending on what procedures they do, right? That's a lot of products to categorize up front. So go through that spreadsheet, organize your spend by what you spend the most on. Focused on the first 100 first, right? You don't have to do this every step in 100% completion. You can do it in steps and progress depending upon your capacity, right? You just need the right person pushing it.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I also liked having in the spreadsheet was that you were able to then filter it to find what you're spending the most on. So what we had identified, which I thought was really great, is we didn't realize our membrane, right? The little piece of membrane that goes in after bone was the single most expensive item of everything that we ordered, right? And even sometimes it was more than the implants themselves. And bringing that to light with the team and letting them understand, like when you place bone and a membrane and you don't charge out for the membrane, you only charge out for the bone, you literally let the most expensive piece of, supplies walk out of the practice for $0. So even kind of categorizing it not only by the top spend, but categorizing by the items that are the most expensive really helps bring some light. And then we also did same thing. We filtered it by what items are we spending the most on, like Brad said, and it was shocking to see like how much we were spending on certain items that then we could say if we focused on these, 8 to 10 items, and if we were able to find a better pricing for those, how much it made a bigger impact over the whole year because we ordered the most of those too. So
Well, and
a lot of fun.
as a good little nugget outside of script, Tiffany, bone is one of the biggest savings people see. Takeaway for everybody on the call. All
Yes.
bone comes in the US comes from one of 4 bone banks, right? So in theory, check around. There's other bone out there. It's better priced. It's a big savings typically.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Good. All right. So now we've done all of that.
Mhm.
Why don't we want to live off of a spreadsheet anymore, Brad?
It's cumbersome. It's too much data. It's although very valuable and should be upkept, it can be hard to track all that, manage all that in a spreadsheet, order from multiple different suppliers, track your budget all in a spreadsheet, and actually hold people accountable to that. Set up process for approval. You can't do all that. You need a central, easy way to order all your products, right? And so step 6 is implement a procurement software. There are multiple procurement softwares in the dental space, all of them different than the next. All of them are better than the next thing at each other. They love to talk crap about each other, but they all do the same thing. And that is they allow you to order from all your suppliers on one single sign-on platform, right? The idea being is now you can track your spend against budget in real time. All that formulary you just built, all those suppliers you just negotiated, all those products you trialed or changed or consolidated, you can now implement this into a procurement software. You can take that spreadsheet damn near and dump it into the software. And it's then going to show you all the suppliers that sell those same products and what's best priced and X, Y, and Z. You're going to have real-time visibility to ordering from those best price suppliers. But the most important thing is the procurement software ends up being a tool to empower your ordering assistants to be more cash flow conscious on your behalf. That's my easy way of saying ordering assistants are not typically cash flow conscious individuals. They're getting in, they're ordering, they're doing whatever they were told, getting back into the practice where they're getting yelled at or ultimately where they're providing value. That's what they enjoy. And so to that extent being said, this procurement software, as you set a budget, right? You should be setting in a budget 8%. That's average. That's not what you should be spending. Going through this process, we'll talk about the savings you can see here in a bit, but you should be lowering your budget, putting a budget in there, tracking your spend against it. And ultimately, if people are going over budget, require that to have approval, right? At the end of the day, no as humans, none of us want to be approved to do our job responsibility, something we've been tasked to do. And so now that this ordering assistant is going to be more empowered to be more cash flow conscious, right? They want to stay within that budget. And when they do go over budget, they're going to make sure that they actually need it before having to come ask for it, right? So it's a healthy cash flow management tactic that also empowers your team to do the right things and gives them the data and resources to be able to do the right things.
And y'all know I love spreadsheets, but what the software will do that the spreadsheet won't is a spreadsheet reminds me of, when we all had checkbooks. Well, those of us that were a little bit older, right? And we had our checkbook that we would have to write in, here's how much I spent this month, right? Which it works as long as I write it in each time. It's, again, a spreadsheet to do that is fantastic as long as they put all the pieces in there. What's great about the software is it will help put the budget in, and everything at least that they order inside the platform will stay there. So this is going to be my hot tip on this one is we want to make sure we train our team on the softwares, because it's so easy for them to have the Shine rep walk into the practice and have them come in every Thursday at noon. And what do? They run around the whole office and scramble because they feel like, oh my gosh, I have to have something for you I have to have an order for you today because you came into my office today. They may not need an order, but they feel like they need to have something to order, right? So it adds to the spend. But it's so easy for them to have that rep walk in the practice that's what they're going to continue to do. I had one client turned on Source Club. Next month we got the P&Ls. It was worse. And we're like, what happened? It wasn't worse in the software, but it was worse on the P&L. Do you want to know why? They didn't change the passwords. So the team was ordering in 2 separate platforms. So yes, they stayed in budget here, but they were still doing their old ways over there. So you have to get your team on board with this, and to get them on board, we really want to make sure that we train them on how to use the tools and also how to manage their inventory as well. And so I have another client that they're like, well, we always need everything the next day. And I said, why do you need it the next day? And it's like, well, because we run out and we're not planning on it. And I'm like, then that sounds like a different problem we have to solve. We don't want to be ordering everything the next day. We're going to pay for overnight shipping. It's going to cost us more. So making sure we have a good system in place to help with this is going to be key, super key.
Brad,
I
we
think I
got some
saw a few
questions coming
questions. Yeah.
in on some platforms. So I want to chime in
Yeah.
so you can talk about this a little bit. With
Yeah.
Source Club, is this something that you offer like a one-stop shop? We have all this built in? Because is there certain, what platform would you recommend for them to use for this?
So I've got to be careful with this because to be honest, we work with them all. I work with all the procurement platforms out there. The
Okay.
reality, now, besides one, the reality is there is value in a procurement software regardless of who you use. Part of our solution is you come on with Source Club. We have a GPO buying group piece. We have a software we partner with that you get with your membership access, right? We set it up all for you. We go through this process with you. But if you were to do it on your own, I saw some people use Method out there. I'll be frank, that's the one we don't work with, right? There's some reality of who they're partnered with and owned by that, the supplier's information. Not a lot of suppliers like to sell on that platform, but using Method is better than doing absolutely nothing, right?
Got
So
it.
although I'm not a fan of it, no, kudos, you're doing the right steps and you are implementing a procurement. So I'd argue there's better ones out there, but at the end of the day, you're doing the right thing. So with that being said, I saw Dentira on there. We work with Dentira. We've got members on that platform. They are really heavy on the DSO side. The DSOs love them. They have great dashboards, AP management side of things. They've got a lab side of things, right? They're a little bit more, built for like how you build it out formula wise. It's not really it's kind of a marketplace, but it's a little bit more controlled. We partner with Zen One on the groups that are typically smaller than, let's call it 10 locations, because it gives you more of a broader approach to saving, more visibility. They're not as restricted. They can have autonomy while getting the best prices. But at the end of the day, each are different from themselves. Some are better integrated on accounting softwares. Some are better. Some have labs. Some have a better AP solution. At the end of the day, some of them are just cheap, right? And so, a cheap procurement software is better than no procurement software. Granted, ask me that question off this, and I'll get some very strong opinions. But again,
Catch him at the event. That's what he's saying.
catch me at the event. Let me. I'll tell you how I really feel. But how I
And
really
I've
feel
used
is
some of those. I do have. Where I'm like, ugh.
Again, a lot of those, there's a lot of great ones out there.
Yeah.
Using one is better than using nothing at all.
Love it. Okay.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So now I want to talk about the system that we need to create internally. So I did not go from 10% to 4% to 2% literally overnight. It didn't happen that way. I am going to teach you some of my secrets though that I did do. And one of them is we got to create a budget. Okay. Because if we don't create a budget, people are going to spend whatever they want to spend, and they're going to. One, if I want them to spend 5%, okay, I need to set my budget for 4%. Why? Because there are going to be those items that they won't get in the platform, okay? They may not be able to get their nitrous that way. So what are they going to do? They do have to pick up the phone and they got to call the company to get the nitrous to come in. All of a sudden you have that like toothbrush order that somehow is on auto ship every quarter that you haven't paid attention to, and that pops in, right? There are going to be things that don't pop in that the team doesn't account for. And if you want them to spend, if you give them a 5% budget, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to spend up to that 5% budget, and they might spend a little bit more. So what we did is I gave them a smaller budget than what I wanted them to spend. And when we were already at 4%, if you remember when I started with Brad. And so when he said he could save money, I was like, okay, let's see, right? So I told my ordering gal, I said, okay, I want you to set the budget at 3.5% this month. Nobody complained. All right, so I want you to go to 3.25. I want you to go to 3%. I want you to go to 2.75, right? 2.75. I want you to go to 2.5. And we got to about 2.5 and we heard a little bit of squawking from people. But you know what the best thing was about it as well is when they would call her and they were like, oh my gosh, Denise, we need to go over, like, I need to put this order in and I'm going to be over by like $500 or whatever it was. She now had the authority and she already knew how much more she had in her budget. And she was like, yep, no big deal, right? Like she would still like, yep, no big deal, but she'd still kind of push back. She'd go look at their part and just see like, did we order 10 bags of HVE tips? Like we don't need 10 bags of HVE tips. We probably need like 2 bags of HVE tips to make it through, right? So she would push back a little bit, but then it also gave her that buffer that if they did have to go over, she knew she was still under. So create your budget. And then you need to make sure you're tracking this budget. This is not a set it and forget it, because if we set it and they go over the budget and nobody says anything, what's going to stop them from going over the budget? Nothing. Why? It's not what we preach, it's what we tolerate. So if we don't talk about the budget's not going to change. 100%.
So how do they create their budget? Is this off production, collections? How do they create that?
I love this. Collections. 100% collections, because our P&Ls, they're not stacked up against our production. And so I would also tell the teams too, I think of production like a hug, right? And can I pay my team with hugs? I can't. I need to pay them with money. I need to pay them with a collection. So collections is the money, right? So it's got to be off of my collections. And we did it the month before. So what did we just close out July? What my July collections were is what my August budget became. Okay.
So as you talk through that, so what we kind of suggest is the gold standard establishing your budget, right? So you take your last 3 months average supply spend as a percentage of revenue, right? So January it was 5, February was 6, next month it was, I don't know, 7, right? All right, we averaged at 6, right? Or whatever it may be. That is your baseline. Now, if you don't go through any of this process, that's what you're going to have to set your budget. That's what you're spending. That's what you're using, right? At the end of the day, if you're not changing anything. But going through this entire process, yeah, you can get your budget down to 4.5%, but that depends on your payer mix and your procedures. If you're just yanking wisdom teeth out of fee for service office, you can get down to 2%. Tiffany keeps referencing 2%. 2% is a really aggressive goal. Our goal for our members is between 3 and 4.5%, right? So all that to say, without doing this process, you're not going to get to 3 or 4.5%, right? This is going to get you there. But ultimately taking that, what you were before, right? So you were at 6% before. I'm going to use easier math because I'm an idiot. So let's say your budget was at 5%. That was your 3 months average. You apply that to next month's forecasted revenue, right? That's your supply spend budget. But let's say you go through this process and you save 20% by going and consolidating and house brands and here and there, right? Then you need to reduce your budget by 20%. So, i.e., lower that to 4%. If you're at 3%, lower that to 2%, right? So you don't need to just slap a budget in there. That's not realistic. It needs to be based on what you order, what revenue, what do you collect, X, Y, and Z. And so collect it from your historical 3 month averages. As you go, if your month to month revenue stays within 2% of the same month to month revenue, 2 to 5%, you can probably just set a flatline budget every single month. But like an orthodontist, their revenue's massively higher in the summer months because the kids out of school and everything. So they have to have way bigger budgets, right? So the more your revenue fluctuates on a month to month basis, the more you may ultimately need to fluctuate your budget on a month to month basis.
Yep. I had a team member and she struggled to keep a budget, right? Like, and her husband even laughed at me when he was like, you gave her a budget? He's like, she doesn't know what a budget means. And I said, okay, so here's how I'm going to help you. And she got a 2 week budget. So every 2 weeks, she got a budget from the last 2 weeks, which is also something I suggest for peds groups where we have these months, like summer kicks up right now, and you guys are like crazy people, right? And it is super busy. And all of a sudden we hit this really busy time. And then we hit that peak and it starts to fluctuate down. So it's like, I don't necessarily need a giant budget once fall hits, but if I'm going in my past month, then you're going to run into that. So doing a 2 week budget, and oh my gosh, she was amazing on the 2 week budgets, especially because if I gave her the whole month's worth of budget, right, she'd blow through it in 3 weeks. And the last week she'd be like, we're really out of this. Like we have to order it. And honestly, I'm like, we got to drive revenue, right? Like I'm not going to tell you no where we don't have composite. And it's like, oh, well, let's schedule those fillings next month. Let's schedule them next, let's schedule that crown next month. So we put her on a 2 week budget and she did amazing. So if you do see those fluctuations as well, 2 weeks are really nice as well. You do have to have someone to manage it. And I did. We had somebody internally that like she set budget. She was like monitoring it. And our 2% didn't happen overnight, like Brad said. But it was like we played a game and it was such a fun game. We were all so excited to get to 2% for sure.
Well, and Tiffany, that leads to one of the questions I saw in the question box was like, hey, how many times should we be ordering per month? You mentioned kind of the 2 week, budget piece in there. So what we tell most offices is a good place to be is twice per month. That's realistic. The first, week of the month, in reality, that should be 60, 70% of your budget, most of what you need for the month. That second order is a little bit smaller to see what you went through. That is a progressional goal to get to. We work with some offices that place 2, 3 orders a week at, if
Yeah.
average, what I'd say, barely squeaking by. Like you shouldn't lose sleep over it. As if at a maximum it's once per week, right? That's still too frequently, but gold. Whoever said they were doing once per month, that is gold standard.
Yeah,
It can be difficult to predict that, so we say, hey, 2 is realistic, 1.5, but 2 times per month really keeps you hitting order minimums for free shipping and all that kind of good jazz.
for sure. Yeah. Multiple times a week is, ugh, but you'll get there. I promise. So once we get there, team, we want to get to our rinse, repeat, recycle, especially if you've coached with me, these are like my favorite words is rinse, repeat, recycle, because we want to get it to where we do have this kind of on an auto play, right? Where we're just going through, we're monthly going in and doing some audits, checking our inventory. We're getting our team's feedback. So again, when we were starting to cut down our budgets, we were finding out from team, hey, how is this working? What's not? Making sure you're getting your team feedback, because without the team's feedback on how things are going, I could have just been on the other side, just making cuts and not knowing what was impacting them.
Well, and there was a comment in there as well about, somebody changing some micro tip applicators, not liking that. What I would say is as you rinse and repeat, you try these, don't also get discouraged, right? Try some other things and new things as you go as well. But that feedback from your team, you have to ask it, right? At the end of the day, some of the things you change will be wrong. That happens. We all make mistakes. We're failing forward at the end of the day, right? So you may try a micro tip applicator, or you may try a glove and you're like, oh, this is absolute trash, right? But as you go through, don't get discouraged. There are more than one options. There's 100 different things you can look at and choose. And at the end of the day, you may not want to go the cheapest, but there's likely another value out there that's a better price as you go.
Yeah. And we had a monthly meeting actually on supplies, and that really helped as well.
Yeah.
Just really having that monthly meeting in with your teams to really talk through them.
Mhm.
So part of maintaining the system is really daily, what are we using every single day and who's tracking it? How are we keeping track of when it's the last item, right? So we had multiple team members that focused on, they had different areas that they had to stock. And when they were down to a certain number, then that's when they put it in the box to get ordered, right? So we had our people that were walking around daily to do that. Weekly, we would have like hygiene that they would check on Monday. On Tuesday, they would check like the composites. On Wednesday was endo. On Thursday was implants. So we really had it set per day. So ordering kind of became mini pieces each day throughout the week. So it wasn't 4 hours on a Friday. So if any of you have people that are taking 4 hours to go through and order their supplies, it's taking them too long, fit it in daily and weekly.
Can't eat
Monthly
an
going
elephant in one
through.
bite.
Oh, what's that, Brad?
Can't eat an elephant in one bite.
Oh,
Mm-mm.
oh my gosh. Yeah. No, we would have girls that would sit in there for hours and like, what are they doing? They're ordering. I'm like, ordering doesn't take hours. Doesn't
Mhm.
take hours. So, monthly going through and doing an audit of your stock, your inventory, reviewing your budget. If you're not reviewing it, again, if you set it, forget it, they're going to overspend. Having those team huddles and getting the feedback every single month is what's really going to help you win at this. Quarterly, go through and refresh and do some trainings, right? We would actually do an internal between the offices. They would have a meeting where they would meet quarterly and they would talk through kind of best practices and they would hear from each other in the other locations, what they were doing, what they had found, how they were, hey, how did you get down to 2%? And I'm at 3% or whatever that is, right? And they would just find from each other what they were doing. And again, you can update your budget. So you don't need to do as aggressive as I did, but if you're maintaining that 5% every quarter, try bumping it down to a 4.5. See if you can now at a quarterly go down and reduce that. And then finally, annually coming in and repeat the process. Go back, see if you can find some better pricing, even on the annual. So Brad, what does a timeline like this look like?
So, typically what we see is, again, can't eat an elephant in one bite. It's going to take some time to go through this, right? You can't, Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't say, hey, I want this done by the end of the month, right? So as you go through, set appropriate timelines to each stage, or it's going to drag out way longer and it's going to lose its fire, right? So what we typically say, take a week or two to assign the lead, right? Take a little bit of time to think about, don't just pencil whip it and say Susie, right? Susie just takes all my crap. Think about think who wants this, who would be best at it, but ultimately take some time, a week or two, and find that right person that can ultimately lead this project. From there, give them another 2 to 3 weeks, right? So you're in weeks 3 to 5 at this point. Collect all the data, reach out, email all of your vendors and your reps, and pull that purchase history, right? Some of the bigger suppliers like Patterson or Shine or some of those other, you can pull your reports online, but give them about 2 weeks to start the audit to ultimately go pull all that spend. The one thing you'll need to provide to them is some targets. They got to go pull these reports. You got to give them some targets to aim at who you spend with. But at the end of the day, give them about 2 weeks to go pull that. From there, that's when you get into the centralized and organized inventory. That's 6 to 9 weeks. Tiffany, I'll let you talk about that piece from the clinical side.
Yeah, it doesn't have to take that long. Honestly, with this whole timeline too, this can go as fast or as slow as you want it to be. So honestly, you could get this done in a matter of 12 weeks, or it could take you a half a year. Just depends on how fast you're going to move along in the project plan as
Or you
well.
can do it in 4 weeks.
You could do it in 4 weeks. Yeah, Brad, we've seen it for sure. We have definitely seen it. And, honestly, at the end of the day, this is going to help you build that scalable system, team, right? We're going to help get to those passive profits and we're going to help stop crashing our Ferraris in buying the black gloves. They're pretty, they look great on TikTok, but we don't need the black gloves, I promise.
Or go find somebody that sells the black gloves at a better price.
Oh, or Brad's found it then.
See, the expert. I knew it.
I know. So you can still have the black gloves. Okay. I just tell them, I'm like, you can't have the black gloves anymore. As I promised, here's your QR code to go in and scan to download your dental supply management checklist. Walks you through who owns it, what's the timeline, helps you get through each one of those pieces for you. And again, just to sign out that project person and help kind of move through this. Again, it's a lot of fun to do. And yeah, I mean, honestly, at the end of it, your tribe coach and you are going to be really celebrating together for sure. So let's start saving, shall we? All right, Miss Jordan,
Love that. All right,
Oh,
guys. So I
I'm
know we are
connected
right
back.
at that. Yeah, we're right at that 5 o'clock hour. So I just want to make sure you guys have this slide. You need to connect with Brad, or you want to connect with Brad, scan this code, get connected. I will say with my tribe, I go after those small wins, and this became a big win. So what you guys just picked up tonight is huge. But yeah, that is it for this evening. So if no one has any last minute questions or anything, you guys have a wonderful night.